Sometimes, living in the US or Europe can feel challenging, especially when rare but serious episodes of human rights violations by the police or courts occur. These events can shake our sense of security and fairness, making us question the systems meant to protect us. However, when comparing such situations to those in certain parts of the world, the reality becomes even starker. Here, we explore a list of countries where human rights abuses are not just anomalies, but a way of life. In these places, all your beliefs about freedom, safety, and justice could be shattered into dust, because in them, the very foundation of basic human rights is trampled every day. Imagine living in a place where your every move is watched, where speaking your mind could land you in prison, or worse. This is the reality for millions in North Korea, officially known as the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. It's a country where the Kim dynasty has held power since 1948, creating one of the most oppressive regimes in the world. But behind the Iron Curtain, there are stories of unimaginable courage and hope. The North Korean government exercises total control over its people, curbing basic freedoms and using fear and violence as tools of power. Let's take a look at some of the most chilling aspects of life under the DPRK. First up, the suppression of expression and information. In North Korea, the media is a state-run machine, and any hint of outside influence is a serious crime. Imagine being cut off from the rest of the world, your only news coming from a government that controls every word and image you see. The punishment? It can be severe, ranging from years of hard labor to imprisonment, and even death. Next, we have the notorious political prison camps. Thousands of people are imprisoned without trial in these camps, facing conditions that are straight out of a nightmare. Forced labor, torture, and a death toll driven by starvation and disease make these camps places of unimaginable suffering. And the worst part, it's often a fate that entire families share, simply because of the actions or beliefs of one member. Ever heard of the cult of personality? In North Korea, it's taken to the extreme. The ruling family, especially Kim Jong-un, is worshipped like a god. And to keep the cult alive, the government employs a massive network of informants and secret police who ensure that loyalty is absolute. If you so much as whisper dissent, you could find yourself facing brutal punishment. But the oppression doesn't end there. Forced labor is a daily reality for many North Koreans. People, including children and the elderly, are pushed to work for hours on end in harsh and dangerous conditions, all without pay. Some are even sent abroad to countries like Russia and China, where their labor is exploited and their wages are seized by the government. And if you thought things couldn't get worse, think again. North Korea is one of the most atheistic countries in the world, with religious practice harshly restricted. If you are caught praying or holding religious beliefs, you could be imprisoned, tortured, or even executed. The price for faith is steep, but many still risk it, driven by an unbreakable spirit. But amid all this darkness, there's light. Defectors who have escaped the clutches of the regime tell stories of resilience, bravery, and hope. Their experiences show that, even in the face of unspeakable adversity, the human spirit still fights for freedom. The world watches and waits, hoping for a day when North Koreans can live without fear, free to express themselves and pursue the lives they deserve. Until then, the courage of those who dare to dream for freedom remains a powerful reminder that even in the harshest of conditions, hope can survive. Welcome to the complex world of modern China, a nation known for its incredible economic growth and global influence. But beneath that booming economy lies a darker side, one marked by severe human rights abuses affecting millions. These abuses reach into politics, religion, culture, and personal freedom, with a single force driving them: the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP. At first glance, China seems like a place of limitless opportunity, but for many, life is a constant battle for basic rights and personal expression. Let's dive into the human rights challenges that have cast a shadow over this powerful country. First up, political repression. The CCP has a reputation for silencing criticism with an iron fist. Activists, journalists, and lawyers are targeted and often charged with subversion of state power, facing harassment, imprisonment, or worse. Imagine trying to speak out or push for change, only to find yourself behind bars, accused of being a threat to the state. And then there's censorship. Enter the Great Firewall, an elaborate system that blocks access to foreign websites, controls online discourse, and scrubs information that the state deems sensitive. Ever heard of the Tiananmen Square massacre? For many inside China, it's a topic buried under layers of censorship, a ghost in the history books. Now, let's talk about the Uyghur Muslim population in Xinjiang. Reports have revealed mass detentions in facilities euphemistically called re-education camps. These camps are places where Uyghurs are allegedly indoctrinated, forced to abandon their beliefs, and made to conform to state ideals. But it doesn't stop there. Forced labor, particularly in industries like clothing and electronics, is also widespread. The implications of this are chilling, affecting global supply chains and raising ethical questions for consumers worldwide. Remember Hong Kong? This city was promised a unique level of freedom under the One Country, Two Systems agreement after its 1997 handover. Fast forward to 2000, and what was once a symbol of democracy saw massive protests, leading to crackdowns, and the 2020 National Security Law. This law stifled dissent, leading to mass arrest and a tighter grip on freedoms. And if you think privacy still exists, think again. China's surveillance state is unmatched. With AI, facial recognition, and an extensive network of monitoring, the CCP tracks citizens' behavior through a social credit system. Think of it as a digital scorecard that rewards good behavior and punishes bad actions, creating a climate of constant self-censorship. And the dark reality of forced labor isn't limited to just factories. Reports have linked the forced labor of Uyghurs and other minorities to the production of goods in clothing and electronics, raising serious concerns for international businesses and shoppers everywhere. But amid all this, stories of resistance and escape stand out. Some brave souls have defected to the West, sharing their experiences to shed light on these harsh realities. The Hong Kong protests led to an exodus of activists seeking safety in democratic nations. And the Uyghur diaspora has spread across Turkey, the US, and Europe, supported by organizations fighting for their rights. Despite the risks, tech-savvy citizens use VPNs and digital tools to bypass censorship and plan escapes. But even these tools are closely monitored, making every click and keystroke a potential danger. China's systematic repression remains a significant global concern. But while international calls for change face the unyielding power of the CCP, awareness and advocacy are more crucial than ever. It's a fight not just for China, but for human rights everywhere. When you think of Saudi Arabia, the first things that come to mind might be its massive oil reserves and strategic role in global politics. But behind the headlines of wealth and power lies a nation grappling with severe human rights challenges. Let's take a closer look at the issues that make Saudi Arabia a focal point of international attention. Saudi Arabia is an absolute monarchy, ruled by King Salman and his successors, who maintain tight control over the country. This control comes at a cost. Freedom, expression, and basic rights are often sacrificed. Gender inequality is one of the most visible and significant issues. For years, women were subject to the guardianship system, where a male guardian had authority over aspects of their lives, from travel to education and employment. While strides have been made, like allowing women to drive in 2018, activists pushing for real change face imprisonment, torture, and harassment. The story of Lujain al-Hatlul, a brave advocate for women's rights, is just one example of this harsh reality. Political dissent is another dangerous road in Saudi Arabia. Speaking out against the government or royal family can lead to severe consequences, from imprisonment to the death penalty. One of the most shocking moments in recent history was the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi in 2018. His brutal killing, linked to Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, sent shockwaves around the world and strained diplomatic ties. Religious persecution is also deeply entrenched. The country enforces Wahhabism, a strict interpretation of Islam, and discriminates against minority Islamic sects like the Shiites. This persecution has led to executions, such as that of Shiite cleric Nimr al-Nimr in 2016. It's a reminder that in Saudi Arabia, religious expression is tightly controlled, and non-Muslims often face harsh restrictions as well. The judicial system is anything but independent. It's used as a tool of government control, enforcing harsh laws that include one of the highest execution rates in the world. The death penalty is applied for offenses as varied as drug possession and blasphemy, with executions often carried out by beheading or crucifixion. Imagine living in a place where a minor misstep can lead to such a fate. Want to gather with friends or protest? Think again. Public assemblies and protests are banned, and any association not approved by the government is tightly monitored. Even online activism can come with severe consequences, thanks to widespread surveillance and censorship. During the Arab Spring in 2011, many countries saw large-scale protests. Saudi Arabia, however, managed to avoid major uprisings by cracking down hard on dissent, detaining clerics and activists to send a clear message: challenge the status quo, and you will pay the price. One of the most chilling examples of this control came in 2016 when 47 prisoners were executed in a single day. Among them was Nimr al-Nimr, a prominent Shiite cleric. It was a powerful warning to anyone who dared to oppose the regime and heightened already tense sectarian divides. For those who managed to escape, finding safety isn't easy. Many dissidents seek asylum in places like the US and Canada or Europe. where they can share their stories and seek protection. Social media has also become a powerful tool for activists, allowing them to spread their message, build international support, and sometimes even secure asylum offers. Organizations and NGOs play a vital role, helping defectors find temporary refuge and advocating for their rights. And while some manage to escape and rebuild their lives, many others remain at risk, facing constant danger under the watchful eyes of the regime. The international community continues to raise its voice, demanding change and highlighting these abuses. But reform remains difficult against a powerful, unyielding state. This is why global awareness and advocacy are so crucial. They shine a light on the struggles within Saudi Arabia and remind us that the fight for basic human rights is a battle worth taking on. Iran, a country of breathtaking landscapes, ancient ruins, and a rich cultural history. But beneath the beauty lies a reality that millions of Iranians face daily: severe restrictions on freedom, human rights abuses, and an unyielding grip of power that shapes every aspect of life. Today, let's take a closer look at why this nation, known for its deep traditions, is also infamous for its struggle with freedom and rights. Iran is ruled by the Islamic Republic, which was established in 1979 after the overthrow of the Shah. The government combines Islamic law, known as Sharia, with a theocratic political system, making dissent dangerous and difficult to express without serious consequences. One of the biggest issues: suppression of political dissent and freedom of expression. The government has a tight hold on any criticism. Activists, journalists, and even social media influencers can be arrested, harassed, or worse, simply for speaking their minds. Remember the 2009 Green Movement? What started as protests over alleged election fraud turned into a massive crackdown, leaving thousands arrested and many dead. Women's rights are another battlefield. The mandatory hijab law is just the tip of the iceberg. Women face harsh consequences for defying it, including harassment and imprisonment. Activists like Masih Alinejad, who have courageously called for change, are often targeted by the government. Discriminatory laws related to marriage, divorce, and custody. They still heavily favor men, making everyday life a challenge for Iranian women. And when it comes to religious freedom, Iran's record is grim. The Shiite majority discriminates against Sunni Muslims, Baha'is, Christians, and Kurds, with the Baha'i community facing especially harsh treatment. From being denied access to higher education to arrests and the destruction of religious sites, minority religious groups often live in fear. Let's talk about the death penalty. Iran has one of the highest execution rates in the world. What's worse, people can be executed for offenses that aren't even violent. And yes, even juvenile offenders are at risk. The death of Mahsa Amini, a 22-year-old who died in 2022 after being arrested for not wearing her hijab properly, ignited massive protest and renewed outrage around the world. It was a stark reminder of the brutal methods used to suppress dissent. The Iranian government isn't just watching from the sidelines. It's controlling what you see and hear. Independent journalism is under constant threat, with many journalists jailed, exiled, or silenced. The internet is heavily censored, and social media platforms are blocked, leaving many to use VPNs and other tools just to stay connected to the world. Throughout history, we've seen the courage of those who push back. The 1979 Iranian Revolution, the Green Movement of 2009, and the 2022 protests after Mahsa Amini's death were powerful displays of defiance. But while some have managed to escape to safety, many Iranians still face oppression daily. Many seeking refuge head to countries like the US and Canada or Europe. The Iranian diaspora has become a voice for change, advocating for those left behind and pushing for awareness. Social media has become a lifeline for spreading their message and calling on the world to act. Technology has become an unexpected ally for those fighting for freedom. VPNs and encrypted messaging allow Iranians to share their stories, report on human rights abuses, and organize in secret. This small digital shield provides a chance for people to fight back, even if it's just a step toward freedom. International advocacy is powerful too. Dissidents use their platforms to push for sanctions, influence foreign policy, and keep the world aware of what's happening inside Iran. It's a reminder that change is possible when people stand together, even if it feels far away. Russia, a land of breathtaking landscapes, a rich cultural tapestry, and a history that spans centuries. But behind the grandeur of this massive nation lies a story of growing human rights challenges, especially under President Vladimir Putin's leadership. Let's dive into what life is like for millions of Russians facing restrictions, censorship, and a crackdown on freedom. Since the early 2000s, Russia has seen an increase in government control, stifling voices that dare to disagree. But what does that really mean for everyday citizens? Well, let's break it down. First up, freedom of expression and political dissent. Imagine speaking out about the government and suddenly finding yourself on the wrong side of a jail cell. That's the reality for opposition leaders like Alexei Navalny, who has not only been imprisoned but also survived an assassination attempt. The Foreign Agent Law, which expanded in 2021, targets NGOs, media, and individuals who receive funding from outside Russia, effectively silencing critics and shrinking the space for civil debate. Now, let's talk media. Russia's state-controlled channels are the go-to sources for most news, pushing a narrative that aligns with the government's views. Independent journalism, that's under constant threat. Reporters face harassment, threats, and even violence. Just look back at the 2006 assassination of Anna Politkovskaya, a journalist whose brave reporting on corruption and human rights cost her life. Human rights defenders and NGOs are also in the crosshairs. Organizations like Memorial, which stood up for human rights and historical memory, were shut down under accusations of being foreign-controlled. LGBTQ+ activists face severe restrictions too, with the 2013 gay propaganda law making it a crime to publicly support LGBTQ+ rights. And the fallout: surveillance, harassment, and arbitrary detention. And don't forget the minorities, ethnic and religious groups, like the Tatars in Crimea or the indigenous peoples, often face discrimination and violence. Hate crimes are common, but rarely investigated. The crackdown on dissent hit hard when Crimea was annexed in 2014, with the Crimean Tatar community suffering greatly from displacement and arrest. Inside the prison walls, torture is still a grim reality. While the death penalty for ordinary crimes was abolished in 1996, prison torture is used to extract confessions from those the government deems troublesome. And prisoners of conscience, they face some of the harshest conditions imaginable. But the Russian people aren't without their tools. VPNs and encrypted messaging apps help them bypass censorship, access information, and connect with allies. These digital lifelines are helping them fight back, one click at a time. Then there are the protests. The 2011-2012 demonstrations against election fraud were met with brute force. And who could forget the 2022 anti-war protests? Thousands were arrested for opposing the invasion of Ukraine. And the government quickly passed laws that criminalized speaking out against the military. Escape has become the only option for many. Those targeted for activism or political beliefs are seeking refuge in places like the EU, the US, and Canada. Opposition figures continue their work from abroad, shining a light on the issues back home and advocating for change. The fight isn't over yet. NGOs and human rights groups are speaking out, pressuring governments to hold Russia accountable and support those suffering under these policies. Russia's human rights and freedoms issues may be challenging, but the spirit of its people isn't broken. The fight for free speech, for minority rights, and for a better tomorrow continues. Let's stay informed, stay engaged, and keep supporting those who dare to stand up for their rights. Imagine living in a country where freedom is a dream, not a reality, where speaking up could mean risking everything. This is the harsh reality for millions in Myanmar, a nation caught in a cycle of military rule, repression, and conflict. But there's more to this story than just hardship. There's hope, resilience, and the relentless pursuit of freedom. Myanmar, also known as Burma, is a country with a rich history and breathtaking beauty. But behind the surface, the struggle for human rights has been ongoing for decades. The military, known as the Tatmadaw, has repeatedly seized control, with the most recent coup taking place on February 1, 2021. This event overturned the democratically elected government of Aung San Suu Kyi and sparked an uprising. What followed were days and nights of protest met with brutal crackdowns, hundreds of lives lost, thousands arrested, and countless families shattered. But Myanmar's struggles don't stop there. One of the most harrowing chapters is the persecution of the Rohingya Muslim minority. In 2017, a military campaign targeted the Rohingya, leading to mass killings, sexual violence, and forcing over 700,000 people to flee to neighboring Bangladesh. The United Nations called it genocide, and the world watched in horror as a minority group was pushed to the brink of existence. And then there's censorship. Myanmar's government has a long history of silencing independent voices. Journalists and activists face imprisonment and harassment for daring to expose the truth or question the status quo. Let's take a look back. In 1988, the 8888 uprising was a powerful show of resistance, where thousands took to the streets to demand democracy. It ended in tragedy, with thousands killed and many more arrested or tortured. Fast forward to 2007, another wave of hope. The Saffron Revolution, peaceful protests led by monks, triggered by fuel price hikes, escalated into a national movement. But once again, the military crushed it, resulting in hundreds of deaths and global condemnation. So, how have people found a way out? Many have fled to neighboring countries like Bangladesh, where refugee camps have become home to hundreds of thousands of displaced people. These camps are not just shelters, they are symbols of survival and resilience. Some have found asylum far from home. Countries like the US, Canada, and others have opened their doors to refugees, offering safety and a fresh start. And from afar, brave activists continue to raise their voices, advocating for human rights, and pressuring governments to stand up against the military regime. The world is watching, and people everywhere are standing in solidarity with those fighting for freedom in Myanmar. Their courage inspires hope that one day, the cycle of oppression will end and freedom will flourish. Each of these countries represents a unique case of human rights and freedoms being severely restricted by authoritarian governments or regimes. While some individuals and groups have found ways to escape, advocate for change, or rebuild their lives in safer locations, the situation remains dire for many. International attention, humanitarian aid, and advocacy continue to be critical in supporting those affected by these severe violations. If you found this overview inspiring, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support helps us bring you exciting content every week. Let us know in the comments which country you'd like us to explore next. See you in our upcoming videos.